2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Inside Movies Galore. We are continuing our monthly theme of local horror films from...
It's the regional fright fest, Dave. I crafted it so that it would roll right off the tongue.
I know.
I love you, buddy.
So let us look at our coming attraction that we are going to be looking at tonight for tonight's discussion.
Oh, very nice.
Run for your life. The nightmare has begun. It will find you in the hour when dream and reality merge. The last desperate moment of darkness.
All right, who is it?
Just before dawn. They were warned.
At least tell me where you're going, so that when you don't come back, I'll know how to fill out the report.
But they did not understand the warning.
What'd you say?
They came to the mountain for adventure and escape. What they found was a trial which only the strongest could survive. How could they know that beneath the awesome beauty of nature lay violence, danger, and death?
Because it's a basic fact of life.
How could they know? The heat of their bodies was the magnet that would draw the terror to them.
No more devils. No more nothing out there. Just God's little creature.
You saw them kids?
I seen him. Down by like I've seen every kid.
They're a good mind to just let them have their due.
Just before dawn, they will cry out. Just before dawn, the demon lives. If only they could die in their sleep.
It's got a death curse.
Yes, that was a sweet tagline they had there, though. If only they could die in their sleep. That was kind of cool. I like that they used that whistle vibe through the whole thing, too.
Yeah.
And it just dawned on me how much that, there's nothing out there, no more devils, only God's little creatures would be a dope intro to, like, a crusty death metal song. So, if it's not been done, get on it, So our film today is obviously Just Before Dawn. This is a 1981 American slasher film directed by Jeff Lieberman, who some of you guys may know is the director also of Squirm and Blue Sunshine, which is a pretty weird fucking movie that we should definitely cover on here at some point. It stars Chris Lemmon, Greg Henry, Deborah Benson, Jamie Rose, George Kennedy, and a few other folks. It's got music by Brad Fidel, cinematography by Dean and Joel King. I don't know if they're brothers or what, but, a couple of kings on there, and they did a good job of it. It was distributed by Picture Media, and it was released on November 27th of 1981. It had a budget of $1 million, and it was shot in the Silver Creek State Park in Western Oregon. Not like probably 30 minutes from where my lady lives, where I spend a week once a month. And I'm probably going to be taking a little day trip out there, trying to see if I can't hit some of these locations that this was shot at.
Cool. Gotta get that waterfall, if anything.
Apparently it's not even...
Show it to us.
For sure, dude. I mean, apparently it's not even hard to get to that specific spot. I've undoubtedly been there at some point in childhood, but I guess locals from the surrounding towns just showed up on a couple of days. The topless lake scene specifically, because word got out. But this movie is kind of things. It's true. This movie is kind of, I guess, sort of marketed as a temporarily lost film for a little while there, which makes sense why it doesn't show up in our regional horror guide, which you guys will see at the end of the episode here. But essentially what we have on our hands is, your classic little slasher in the woods kind of horror flick here. In many ways, I think pioneered some stuff that we saw in later franchises and franchises that were going on at the time, and a really cool send up to movies that maybe you wouldn't think of on your initial viewing of it. So this is a good time for us to jump into our first impressions here. And I guess since you're to the left of me and looking beautiful there, Forrest, we're going to start with you. What's going on with your first impressions there, bud?
All right. So this was actually surprisingly a first time watch for me. I don't know how I went as long as I did. For all the 80s slashers I've watched, I'm surprised at I've gone as long as I did without watching this one.
Was that your first time watching the trailer for it too?
yes, it was actually. Oh God. As far as my first impressions, I don't know. This one just didn't really. I felt like this one kind of didn't really stand out to me as much in terms of like blood and guts and kills. Although the killer himself was pretty fucking creepy. I think I've seen people like him around in the subways before.
I saw a couple of people like him today when I was buying chicken strips, dude.
But as far as like 80s slashers or slasher movies set in the woods, I guess it was interesting as far as being a deep cut of the genre. But I just didn't find it. It just didn't really stand out to me the way that The Burning or Sleepaway Camp or obviously Friday the 13th do.
Right.
Yeah.
It definitely, I think it got creative with the kills that it did. Obviously, we'll delve into that more, but it definitely wasn't trying to be the splatterfest type. It was early 80s slasher shit. So in their defense and to their credit, they were doing this while everyone else was doing it. I think Friday the 13th had been shot the year before and released a few months earlier. I think movies like Maniac and stuff like that, or even maybe The Burning, were still in various forms of production or release. It was all a very new time for the stuff. So hopefully we'll change your impression of a couple of those kills as we get through it here, because I think there's some rad shit that they did that it's like, well, there was no precedent for that.
I did appreciate the use of Heart of Glass. I did appreciate the use of
Blondie up in there.
You can't go wrong with Blonde.
Never. It's always just stick it in. I don't even care if it fits the context. So what about you there, Kotobuki Jake? What is your first impressions of this?
Well, perhaps less surprising, this was also a first-time watch for me.
I can't believe it.
Yeah, I know, man, really. No, it's... and this is one that I feel like I've heard of, but I never really gave a second thought to it. It's not one that has been on my radar all that much. But I watched it, and I actually, strangely enough, probably got more out of it, it sounds like, than Forrest did. I didn't think it was a bad movie by any means. I agree that it felt a little bit underwhelming at times. But I thought, as far as basic slasher kind of films go, I thought it did good. I thought it was interesting. Some of the comparisons that I've heard, I think Brandon tried to give me some comparisons, and those were some unfortunate ones. I liked this a hell a lot better than Wrong Turn. And I read that the director was actually highly influenced by Deliverance.
Yeah.
When I read that, I was like, "Oh, that's so perfect," because there was a scene with I think it's with Jonathan and Mary Cat or whatever her name is, where there was a moment where I was a hair's breadth away from pausing it and doing one of my messages on the message feed where I was going to say, boy, you got a pretty mouth. I swear I was thinking that.
I guess there was an alternate path for that at one point, but continue, sir.
But overall, it wasn't bad. I seriously do, as I mentioned on the feed, and I mentioned to you, Mo, there are certain places that generally, if I see a truly local film to that area, I tend to want to go. And Oregon is like that. And this one, the night before I watched First Cow, I mentioned one to you, Leave No Trace. I've seen some movies in that area where I'm like, I want to go.
It's
And
beautiful.
I get the same vibe from a movie set in New Zealand or Ireland. That sort of.
Well,
it's kind of interesting.
Playing into the horror theme too. There is something beautiful about Oregon, I think, where you can go to a place like Silver Falls that isn't even off the beaten path. It's just right there, but still feel like you could get killed by fucking hillbillies. You know what I mean?
Right. And I've been to the area, not specifically the exact same river, but I've been very close to where they filmed Deliverance, and I've been in places like that in Appalachia, and yeah, I could feel that vibe.
Yeah, man. I mean, they did a good job of capturing it. So, what about you there, Brandon?
Well, this is obviously a first watch. I had not heard of it before you mentioned it, but after seeing it and finding the opportunity to get the Blu-ray, I did, and I must say that usually a 1980 or 81, I think it was one of those 2 years.
81
horror film is not usually my first choice to try and get on Blu-ray. They usually look better on DVD or VHS because the grainier, usually the better. But not here. Matter of fact, the Blu-ray and the fact that they cleaned it up a lot looked really good. And most of y'all probably saw the Blu-ray cut. I don't know how well it came over on the internet, but I was surprised at how well it was preserved. So because it looked really good for a 1981 horror film that I never heard of, and I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed the visuals, I enjoyed the music, and I enjoyed the basic slaughter. It was fun. I got wrong term vibes from it because that's how it felt to me. That idea of those people getting lost in the mountains in those areas. And then getting killed by the crazy inbred demon creatures that reside.
It's really just fat Gargamel chasing them around the woods, but
and as somebody who grew up in the middle of the forest, I mean, I grew up in the mountains. I grew up out in the middle of nowhere, and I was I was an Eagle Scout. I guess still am because theoretically, you never stop being one. I have been through quite a few hikes, through quite a few mountain areas in Virginia, but that doesn't even compare to what it must be like on the West Coast. And it is something I'm envious of, and if I ever get a chance to do nature hiking over in that area, that is a place I would love to go.
Just go in pairs, man.
Field trip to Oregon.
Appropriate safety gear.
I'm just going to walk on over. It sounds like a good thing.
Yeah, just do the Forrest Gump.
That's what my brother was going to do.
So what about you there, Dave? First time watch, first impressions?
Actually, this is a first time watch for me. I'd actually had the film for quite some time. I had heard that the Just Before Dawn Shriek Show a double disc was out of print at the time that I had picked mine up for $10. So that was kudos for me. But I had not actually opened the sucker up and watched it. And I find myself in familiar actor territory because I notice our main dude who apparently owns the land up there. His name is Warren, played by Greg Henry.
Yeah, that guy's in a bunch of shit.
He ended up showing up in Bates Motel as the sleazy salesman because I recently watched it with Boris recently, and but there is a connection to Sleepaway Camp here.
Yeah, we got Mel.
Yeah.
Sleepaway Camp as the drunk guy. I think his name's Ty.
Yeah, so Ty is tied into Sleepaway Camp. And I do like the whole inbred family concept with the twins. It's kind of interesting because in the very, I mean, without getting too much into the plot line, that very beginning church scene where dude gets castrated and the one guy dresses up as the fella that he had just castrated, and you don't even realize there's another guy who looks exactly like him, like somewhere lurking nearby, Yeah,
that was a good reveal they pulled off there. It was fun. And I guess apparently the movie was supposed to be very much more like a hillbilly inbreeding cult in the woods type story before, but they decided to scale it back. I thought that was pretty interesting reading that. We also got Chris Lemon up in there, who some of you guys may know as the sidekick to Hulk Hogan on TV's Thunder in Paradise, one of the best pieces of television ever made. So.
Also,
which was made into a trilogy.
Yeah, he is the son of Jack Lemmon right there, and he did several movies with his dad. So look into that. And then obviously we talked about Jeff Lieberman at the beginning of this, but Squirm and Blue Sunshine cannot be ignored. He also did the movie Remote Control from 1988, I think. So pretty cool stuff. He wrote the screenplay for The Neverending Story 3, but this is the last that'll be fucking mentioned.
Which one?
Unfortunately, that was never a good movie, unfortunately, but
never will be either.
There's going to be somebody out there that Neverending Story 3 is their favorite movie of all time, right next to American Pie Presents Girls Rules
and Home Alone 3.
And I'm gonna dunk on all you guys and say that shit's be trash, but I respect you nonetheless. I like trash, but come on. What are we doing here?
I love trash.
We're dumpster baby diving here.
I think if you're liking that shit, you are the dumpster baby, dude. that's what's going on. But basically, let's move on to you, Dave. Did we get your first impression on this completely, or are we done there?
Not entirely. I mean, I did get some wrong-term vibes, but you have to understand this film happened before it, so it really outshines it more or less as being the first hillbilly family after the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which was a phenomenal hillbilly family.
Absolutely. But, this decidedly, even if it was inspired by it, which the guy claims it wasn't, I don't know how, being like someone directing horror movies, you hadn't seen Texas Chainsaw by 1980.
If they weren't inspired by it, they were influenced.
Maybe he had taste.
Well, he said that he said he'd never even seen The Hills Have Eyes or The Hills Have Eyes I can buy. And honestly, I can buy the Texas Chainsaw thing too, because if he was trying to do a Texas Chainsaw thing, it might have been like cannibal related, you know what I mean?
Well,
but there was nothing of that in there.
Surely he had seen at least Bay of Blood or something like that.
Something, right? But I mean, there might be some. I find it hard. I find it not hard to believe, but I find it astounding that someone into horror hadn't seen Texas Chainsaw by 1980. Yeah. But I also take for granted home video and things like that. I think that the prints of Texas Chainsaw might have still been up in the air too for a while there back then. So it wasn't exactly playing cinemas.
I was gonna say home video wasn't exactly available back then.
Right. So it's possible. It's just astounding to think about. And to me, go ahead, Jake.
I was going to say, slight callback to a conversation that was going on a few minutes ago, talking about the different people involved. You also have the Ranger played by George Kennedy, who's a very talented. Yeah, he's a very talented veteran actor.
But treat in the movie too.
Of course.
Yeah, well, he is. But I
for-
like the timing of this is excellent because we're in February, and apparently he was born and died in February.
Well, happy day to you, sir. Both of them, I guess. You know.
So he was, yeah.
I forgot
Dude,
about
he's from
an
tons of good
unsung-
stuff, isn't he? Like,
Yeah.
Naked Gun is like one of the things he's known for. Friggin', he was in a bunch. Like, he was one of those dudes who did.
Well, he
like
won an
Western-
Oscar for Cool Hand Luke. I mean, yeah, that's
Right, that's what I was just gonna mention. Like, he's one of those dudes that did that good transition from like comedies and westerns back in like the 60s and 70s into like action movies and horror films in the 80s, which is where I know him from shit like The Terror Within and stuff like that. You know, badass like monster movie where the thing looks like the Dorn from fucking Star Trek if it got like a bunch of radiation burns. It's awesome. But yeah, I mean, he did such a good transition into other movies like that while still occasionally appearing in comedies and westerns. It's fucking awesome. Dude's a legend. He just, you know, it's one of those, what do you call it, like a character actor where he's, you know, he's never going to get that recognition for being a legend. But make no mistake, he is the name dude in this movie right here.
Oh, yeah.
I guess my first impression of it is similar to a lot of your guys's. I mean, you know, yeah, I did notice right away that they weren't going for the splatter with like the gore and stuff, but I appreciated it for that because of the time period that it was done in. Like I mentioned, you know, it was 1980. They were still all figuring this stuff out at the time. So there wasn't really anything for them to rip off, and that wouldn't have been so obvious, you know. Like, people have tried to accuse it of being like a Friday the 13th thing, and it's like, well, they're not even fucking going to camp. Yeah. And, you know, there's no revenge plot here. So where's the comparison, you know? And even with the Texas Chainsaw thing, it's like, it's really has more of like a religious sort of, you know, backwoods vibe to it, even though they shaved a lot of that out of the movie, thankfully. You know, you do get that idea that because of all the references to the demons and the devils, that this is just an entirely different, like, inbreeder thing. It's not, you know, hillbillies driven to cannibalism like in Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah.
So it's different enough from all that stuff for me to not just write it off as a ripoff. Obviously, the Oregon scenery is captured beautifully. The movie itself has just a really cool vibe to it with the soundtrack and the whistling like motif through the whole thing, and lots of stuff like that. There are some subtleties to it that actually do line up pretty well with like missing 411 stuff and fucking Bigfoot, and we'll get into that as we go through it a little bit here. But so there's a lot of things in it like that made up for the lack of visceral carnage, I guess you could say. And it just was kind of one of those movies. I was pretty sure I'd seen it at some point. I think I was thinking of a totally different movie, possibly called Grotesque. I know it had Linda Blair, and there was like a deformed brother in this house kind of out in the woods, and then he ended up killing some bikers or something. I'm pretty sure it's called Grotesque or something. I don't know. I'm trying to do the whole thing where I like remember it instead of just looking up Linda Blair movies, because it bugs me when something I've seen like that is right there at the back of my mind. But I thought that might have been this movie. So I was in that gray area with it where I didn't know if I'd actually seen it. I knew the title and had seen like the poster and shit like that. I just wasn't sure if I'd seen the movie, and it turned out I hadn't. This was definitely like a fresh watch for me, and I enjoyed it immensely. So I guess from there we'll go into, you know, just the basic chain of events. We'll cover some of the finer points of different scenery and stuff as it comes up. But these guys essentially are on their way up there to this claim that this guy has, like this plot of land that he's inherited somehow or something. And as they're on their way up there in their sweet fucking RV, they end up coming across like this forest. Well, first they stop at like a forest ranger's shack, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess his place of residence, wherever he was.
Yeah, he's out there.
This dude
like,
has
clients together and shit, and talking to his
and
horse.
the forest ranger is played by George Kennedy, which I love. George Kennedy. He shows up in like one or two of the airport movies. He was in a movie that I really like called Death Ship, and he's just a phenomenal character actor.
He really is, and he's into the role. It seems like. What's that, Brandon?
Yeah, there are two things this dude loves: his weird hybrid bonsais and his horse,
Abigail.
which gets jealous of his bonsais. So I
Yeah.
had to ask Jake on this one. So what do you think of this dude's craft on trees? Like taking like what looks to be a branch or something else and trying to graft it onto something different.
Yeah, well, everyone needs a hobby.
You can't fault the dude for trying. They might not have known the same science back then. He was committed to it in the very least.
Right.
But this scene I especially love because the guy, most other scenes in horror movies like this, when they run across like the wily old dude that's gonna tell him not to go there, the old dude is like straight up just telling him not to go and making a big deal about it, but usually not alluding to what could happen to them.
Right.
This dude pretty much tells him straight up, like, "Well, let me know when where you're going, so that we can know where to look when you don't come back."
He's like, so I know how to fill out the paperwork.
Right, yeah, and he straight up tells him at first, like, I can't let you go up there, but then they present him with this land deed that, you know, gives him ownership of the land, so basically he can go up there whether this guy wants him to or not. And they make the mistake, which, you know, thankfully he gets assistance later in finding them, but they make the initial mistake of being smartasses and, like, lying to him about where they're going to begin with.
Right.
Which automatically maybe doesn't make you lose any sympathy for them, but it definitely makes you think that they're idiots, because they kind of are.
Yeah.
A couple of these people, a little background on our cast here, a couple of these people, like the main dude, I forget his name at the moment, Warren, maybe. He is like an experienced, you know, mountain climber, as is his girlfriend. I think her name might have been Megan. No, that was
Constance is his girlfriend.
Yeah, Constance.
So he could have seen Friday the 13th, I'm guessing, while trying to do this, because that was 1980, right?
He presumably could have seen, you know, Friday the 13th. There's not. Go ahead.
Because you got that Harbinger vibe going. That Friday 13th is one of the ones that started that.
Yeah,
and
he very well
it's got a death curse.
He very well may have been doing the Crazy Ralph thing with the guy at the beginning, but I would say that's almost where the comparison kind of ends. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, that's what I was thinking is the Harbinger, which is one of the traits and tropes of that type of movie.
Yeah, I mean, you know, just to dispel all the shit with it, like if this dude ripped anybody off to do this, he in the very least did it tastefully. You know. It wasn't one of those things where it was like blatant, you know.
I feel like it's its own thing, because I mean, the first time we get like somewhat of an inbred family, I feel is like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Then of course there's The Hills Have Eyes, and then there's a year before this, Motel Hell. So
yeah. When I mention Wrong Turn, I think of Wrong Turn as maybe the guy who did that saw this.
Speaking of the cast and the inbred family, we have Mary Cat, who's played by Katie Powell. Apparently, she's only made, according to IMDb, she only has 2 movie credits. She has some TV credits and 2 movie credits, and I've actually seen the other movie she was in.
Nice. Which movie is that?
94 movie called Milk Money.
Oh, shit. That's a classic, dude.
Yeah.
I love Milk Money.
That was apparently her last credit.
Problematic now, as the kids say. But, you know, it was just a good time.
Yes.
But pretty much the part that made me, you know, they kind of blow this park ranger off. Like, we're going up there. And then, like I said, they do some smart assery and they kind of, you know, lie to the dude, which is just never a good idea. That's one of the first things they teach you if you're going into the woods up here, which we'll get into more. If a park ranger asks, you tell them exactly where you're going and how long you're going to be there. So they know to look for you, because they will, maybe not in front of you, but they will make a note of this shit and check on you at some point. And unless you're planning on doing something illegal or stupid, you should have no problem with them knowing where you're at. But that aside, the part that makes me kind of lose sympathy for them is when they run across Ty, old Mill from Sleepaway Camp, running through the woods, because we kind of glossed over the initial scene. Like, these two hunter dudes are at this church, which looks dilapidated, like it's been there, but apparently was built for the production, as per Wikipedia. And, you know, the old dude is like playing around like he's going to be a preacher, and he's looking up at the ceiling, and he sees like this chubby fella looking in this hole in the ceiling. And, you know, shortly afterwards, he runs outside and he's like looking around like, what the fuck, did I really see that? And inside, presumably same chubby fella, stabs dude, like the guy that was with him hunting and was in the process of stealing like a candelabra for his wife off the wall or something like that. He stabs him right through the dick and out the butt. There's no nice way to say it. Just that's how it happens, you know. And thankfully, they didn't go full deliverance in that scene, because that could have gotten nasty real quick. They were being tasteful about it again. So pretty much, this guy's been running around in the woods the whole time, just sipping the same pint of whiskey somehow. That just seems to never end. And he eventually, you know, after they've left the park ranger's house in their friggin' RV, they run across this old dude just running through the woods. And this is one of those parts that I wanted to bring up, that just looking at it as a slasher movie, it don't mean much. But when you look at it as like a Northwesterner, it does. The way the dude describes it, he's like, oh, I saw something standing behind the tree there. I don't know, maybe a bear or something like that. Like, they're talking about Bigfoot. It's for sure they're just describing a Bigfoot sighting, and then they get out there thinking they're gonna like take a picture of it or whatever, and so they all kind of stream into the woods. It's one of those things where they do it without saying it, you know. And I thought that was super rad. There's another especially bone-chilling sort of thing that does exist over by you guys, but it's a connection to a phenomenon that I think you guys will find interesting. But this first whole incident where the camera dude spots this thing out the RV, and they get out and they run into the old dude. What are you guys' thoughts on that? I thought it was pretty fucked up how they like wouldn't even just drive the guy 5 minutes back down to the park ranger's house or anything like that. Like, wouldn't even let him in the RV. I get that. Go ahead. Not
to mention the fact that the forest ranger had asked if they could at least tell them where he was going, and they just kind of ignored him as they went further along. But I think it was pretty douchebaggy of them to just not take him along at least to a certain extent. You know, be a friendly, you know, person. This guy is obviously afraid of whatever's after him. Come on, at least
they've been driving a few minutes. They could have backed him down the trail real quick and just dropped them off. I mean, it wouldn't have cut into their time that much. No. And then especially the part that bothers me is when that one chick, Constance, seems to be the only one of them with a real conscience, which is really Constant. So there we go.
She seemed pretty. She seemed pretty much to be the steady one in the group, the one that kind of knew what was going on. You know, she didn't have she wasn't very good at acting on that knowledge in many parts. But other than that,
it was. She's pretty much the only one of them that speaks up and is like, "We can't just leave this dude here." And they're like, "Well, we're not taking him in the damn van. He probably smells of liquor." They don't say that, but that's probably what they're thinking. So they're content to just leave him out there. And she's like, "Well, he'll starve." And the one dude's like, "Or he'll die." And she's, I forget how they get to it. They talk about him starving or dying. And the one dude's like, "Well, he's not going to starve, but he might die or something like that." And he chucks some like rations out the window for the old dude. And my favorite part of was it sandwiches? Nice. Well, that, you know, I thought it was like, I don't know, like bags of crackers.
Like sandwiches and like little plastic bags that they had packed, so they threw those out.
That's not too bad. He got some free sandwiches out of it then. But, you know, the best part of it is as they're pulling away, we see this tubby hillbilly fella just jump onto the back of the RV onto the ladder there. Which I thought was awesome, you know. So basically, go ahead.
Okay, I had one major problem with this at the beginning and as we go, because you're introducing this dude in the beginning, and and the way they describe him as they go about this movie, they describe him like a freaking Terminator, and like he's this really tall, well-built, muscly guy, and I'm like, I look back at this just like fat
Nah.
hillbilly-looking dude, and I'm just like. Really? This guy does not look intimidating in the slightest to me.
Yeah, I mean, once you get a
and
good look at him, he's like fat.
except for the
gargoyle.
machete, obviously, but otherwise, yeah. I mean, what?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
You think Arnold was after him?
He was a resilient fella, but he knew when to look at the dude and be like, "Yeah, I'm not athletic to do that. I'm gonna take the long way around." Like when that guy was hanging from the rope bridge. We'll get there. But basically, he's talking about these demons, and they just kind of disregard it. Eventually, they get up as far as they can go with the RV, and it kind of bogs down, so they got to go the rest of the way on foot. So they get their shit out, and they're kind of making their way up there. They don't really seem to have a definite location they're trying to go on this property. It's like they're just sort of up there to try to check it out. Prior to arriving, though, they had hit a deer. What do you guys think on the deer scene? I mean, do you think that deer
that was just somebody throwing a head into the
right?
RV?
Like there was no actual deer. It was one of our hillbillies just tossing a deer out there.
No, it was just a head. It was just a head mount thrown at the RV.
Well, no, I can buy that, but I mean, that's what I'm asking is like, what do you guys think? It was like they actually hit a deer, or one of those dudes was threw a dead deer at them?
I think they hit a deer, but that could just be me.
I don't know. I felt like
whenever I think RV, I think Cousin Eddie.
You're full.
So basically they hit this deer along the way. I thought it was notable because you hear like the squeal when it happens, which doesn't quite sound like a deer to me. And then later on you hear these dudes make like kind of a squealy noise as they're going about their fat business there. No body shaming here. It's just like Brandon pointed out, we're supposed to think these dudes are intimidating, but it's like they seem to have trouble just getting around. So maybe not so much.
Well,
but basically,
I like to think that one of the inbred twins is kind of a practical joker, because you can tell one of them is poking his head through the church in the very beginning scene, and then another like you can see him playing upside down outside the RV. So it's like one of them is kind of a prankster.
Right. Yeah, and I can see that he props up that body later on too. So there is an element to that for sure. I guess that they're arriving at the camp here, and we're about to really dig through them. I guess let's give our what do you guys think of the cast of characters so far? I guess we'll start with you, Dave.
Our cast of characters is some of them are throwaway characters. I mean, characters that you really don't need to care about. Which is our two friends, technically. And I guess I don't care about the guy who has the glasses, because I thought it was kind of rude that he actually took pictures of those twin girls that were in that car as they were passing in the RV.
I mean, he's trying to document the scenery, and it's like, I think as a photographer, I feel like I've heard this said before, they'll just snap instinctively.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's like wartime photographers, man. It's like they're not thinking about what they're really shooting until they've already shot it, because they almost capture it at like the same rate they see it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. But
it seemed like he was trying to kind of stick it with that. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to derail you there.
the one girl, Megan, she kind of reminded me of like the I'm everything is about me, is all about myself. Let's take care of my makeup here, even though I'm out here in the woods. Let's put some blush, you know. I mean, she pulled out the makeup compactor, which was a thing of the 80s.
Oh, they still exist, bro.
I know they still exist, but it was a huge thing in the 80s, though, and you could tell that she is that kind of a character where, you know, she hasn't really a brain in her body, but you know, kind of a bimbo.
What were you gonna say, Jake?
Oh, I was just kind of laughing at the comment. But
what do you think of our group of kids here? I mean, I think personally they were pretty well fleshed out, you know,
yeah,
compared to other slasher kids.
Overall, it was a decent group. I mean, here again, we had kind of a philandering jerk in the form of Jonathan, although he did have that pretty sweet flannel that was kind of fun. We've got, you know, Warren was
colorway. I enjoyed
was
it.
that?
It was a good colorway. I enjoyed
Right.
it. You know.
The Warren was kind of, you know, he was selfish and a little bit of a jerk, but he was also sort of like a, you know, he's like a frat boy, Boy Scout kind of deal. Daniel and Megan just kind of, they could have been more one dimensional. They had a little bit of dimension to them, especially Megan in that one scene. And I was frustrated by Constance as she was too easily frozen in times of trouble, if you will. But mostly she was pretty cool. And the final character transformation at the end I thought was really cool, hence the picture. But
I would have thought you'd have really liked how she made him let that salmon go as well. I did.
I appreciated that.
Salmon conservancy is no joke. You know?
Yeah, no, definitely.
I don't know. Did you have a character you particularly disliked? I found I was kind of neutral to all of them. You know, they were a convincing pack of brats. You know.
I didn't miss Jonathan when he was first to turn up dead. Let's put it that way. But I didn't dislike him extraordinarily, you know, all things considered.
Right.
And, you know, some of the other characters, you know, there were a couple characters that were less developed, but none of them that I just really had it in for.
Right, I kind of came away from it the same way. What about you, Brandon? You think it was an adequate pack of brats there?
Well, you gotta have something to punish.
Yeah, right.
And to me, they definitely deserve to be punished in many ways.
Yeah, that always helps. So what about you, Forrest? Do you like these kids? I guess they're like young adults. I keep calling them kids.
Yeah, they're more young adults than kids.
Mm.
I mean, most of the actors, I think, were like pushing 30 when this was. I mean, most of the actors were pushing 30 when this was made.
To be fair, that happens a lot in slasher movies where they're actually supposed to be teenagers. Though.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's clear though that these kids that they're supposed to be a little older than high school. They're clearly out of high school. I think the characters themselves weren't, even though I had issues with the movie itself compared to other slashers, but I think the characters themselves weren't bad. Nobody really stood out to me as far as being, you know, a bimbo or an asshole.
Right. There was no token annoying dude, you know, that you just want to die right away. Their sense of humor was really natural between all of them. I mean, it just felt like
they're very believable characters. They're very believable characters. So I think though when they do get killed, I do feel bad for them.
Yeah, I did a little bit. I mean, not so much Jonathan because he was like, fuck that old drunk dude. Like, he might die, but he won't starve. Like, that bothered me. I don't know why, just because maybe because it hits close to home with it being out here, and people do die because of that in the woods here.
Right.
Yeah.
Or anywhere really, but it happens a lot up here. That's a bummer. Like, you could have backed down the trail and wasted 20 minutes or something, you know. Yeah, I like them, man. I don't know. I wanted to stop us here and do that because after this, it's pretty much just breakneck fucking, you know, plot like all the way through it because there isn't much of a plot. They get up there, they're hanging out, having one of the most banging campfire scenes in slasher movie history. I don't think anyone can dispute that. I don't know what that is they're listening to, but that song fucking thumps. And they're all dancing around and like drinking wine and stuff. And like that one dude's girlfriend is kind of making like she wants to get with everyone a little bit. I think it was. What's that?
I said, which one? The ginger?
Yeah, the girl that got topless in the pond there. But which I think comes after this point because everyone's pretty jovial still during the campfire scene. They're dancing around. They keep like cranking up the boombox every few minutes because it's just they're getting loud out there. I like it a lot for some reason. I don't know. So many of those campfire scenes in slasher movies kind of play for creeps or they just go straight to the sex stuff, but they took a moment to just boogie down in this bitch, and you know, kudos to it. But basically, you know, this hillbilly family shows up and shoots their boombox, which is just insane. Those moments after that happened were pretty tension filled, you know, because it's like, who the hell was that? You know, was that like those dudes that killed the other guys? Did they get their hunting rifles or something? Or what's that?
No, I was just thinking, like, I didn't think about it when the movie, but then when you just said that, I'm like, that triggers a memory in my mind, and I can't think what it was. And then I just remembered that was that Mark Chestnut song, "Bubba Shot the Jukebox."
Oh yeah,
that's a good song.
It'd be good to overlay over like a edit of this movie. Why not? But basically, they show up and they tell him, "You guys got to get the fuck out of here. You're going to stir up the devil, and that's not what you want." You know. Previous to that, I believe they had came across the girl singing under the waterfall, beautiful waterfall that they walked, which apparently is quite accessible. What do you guys think about that scene of her singing? That was so fucking eerily haunting to me.
Yeah, it was good.
Oh yeah, I love the scene with the waterfall, but again, I just maybe it's because I like the background in general.
It's a good background. I haven't complained about it myself yet. You see, I'm from like the high desert of Oregon too. So the woods, like when you have to go, 40 minutes like east of me to get to the Blue Mountains, or you have to drive like 3 hours west to get to this shit. And so if I was out there, as much as I've lived here my whole life, but I would still just be dead, you know. And when you look at it, it's like super thick forest, you know. There's some scenes that they cover of just general scenery coming into even this point in the movie where you quickly realize, like, yeah, it's no wonder people get separated so easily and then end up lost and dead in these woods because it is the type of shit where you step 15 feet away from them and potentially you can't see each other anymore, you know, and then you panic and walk in a direction that's the wrong one and you're fucked. But, you know, that whole waterfall scene sets up the eeriness, I think, of the scenery and the movie pretty well. Because later on, we get those scenes at night where there's... And this is a point of debate for me in the movie. Like, do you guys feel that the whistle is in the score? Because it seems like that one scene at the campfire, like, afterwards, though, when those guys go back to like get some shit, or that might have been slightly before, but there's that one scene where the girls are sitting there and it's almost like Constance hears the whistle. I don't know if the score just lined up to her noticing a sound in the woods, but I've always took it as the whistle is like in the score and it's also happening. You know?
They definitely included it in the score, but yeah, there are scenes where it's part of it too. I liked how they used it in the score. I thought it was really good for helping to set the tone and everything.
For sure, man. I mean, and like, you know, again, when you line that up with like, because whistling is part of a lot of Bigfoot encounters. You know, so the director said it was to reference that, like, you know, rape whistle or whatever the dude had.
Mhm.
But I think, you know, even if it was accidentally, that's a cool coincidence with the previous, like, obvious nod to Bigfoot sightings, you know. But that stuff aside, you know, like, they've had this encounter with this hillbilly family. They know something's fucked up here. And obviously they're not just going to leave the land because these crazy, like, religious hillbilly folks are coming up there telling them about the devil and demons or whatnot. And pretty much, you know, at some point after this, they have the scene where they come across the second waterfall, and it feeds into a pretty dope little, like, lake, they call it. It's really more of a pond. I mean, thank you for the flattery, but it's, you know, we got plenty of lakes in Oregon that are actual lakes. This is a pond, but they're swimming around in there. We get some, you know, like our you know, scene of some tits in there to, like, up the drive-in quality of the movie or whatever.
Yeah, this was sort of a Blue Lagoon kind of a moment.
Well, yeah, they're just swimming around in water that I can fully vouch is probably cold as shit, regardless of the time of year. And there's a beautiful moment, which I think they pulled off perfectly and would have been a sick moment in a Friday the 13th movie, of which I think this movie is full of moments like that. You know,
if Jason had given the lead girl a feel up.
Well, and we'll talk about the machete. Trust me. But, you know, this dude, like our killer hillbilly, creeps into the water as our naked girl's boyfriend is creeping out of the water. And she's playing around with him for a second and getting kind of touchy.
Yeah, he's kind of copping a feel on her.
So I had a question for those of you who saw this for the first time. I think it's everybody, isn't it?
Yes.
So, okay, who thought that this killer, that the killer had actually killed the boyfriend when he went under that second time
and floated up all slow? Yeah, that was beautifully shot, I think.
Because I didn't think he was just going to appear over there. I thought that he was going to be dead right off, and then she was going to notice that he was dead like then, but they decided to extend it a little bit longer.
Right, and dude, the whole thing of it is, like, the way they shot that is so perfectly done, I think, with him slowly coming up from the depths of the water and then seeming dead for a second and then kind of cocking his, like, stupid face at her and making fun. Like, that's probably one of the best, because it's not the first time, especially in these, like, you know, backwoods slasher movies where someone's done the old, you know, oh, I drowned gag. It happens Friday the 13th, actually. And I think they, in a lot of ways, did it better, like, what do you call it, cinematically in this one, you know? Like, if they could have pulled off that same thing of him, like, floating up all dead looking in Friday the 13th, they just didn't think of it clearly, but it was a cool touch, and it was legitimately kind of funny. You know, it's rare that I laugh at those kind of dorky things in slasher movies, but I found it comical. But what do you guys think about that dude seemingly, like, just disappearing into the water back there? He did it solid. I don't know if it was his girthy body that allowed him to sink so perfectly into the water, you know, but it was almost kind of better than some of the times I've seen Jason walk into the water.
Yeah, it's weird seeing a massive body disappear into the water so quickly.
He's a hefty boy, or boys, I guess, because there is, like, two of them presumably are the same guy with different makeup.
Same actor playing twins.
There we go.
They pulled a Parent Trap.
They did. This is like that's the Parent Trap of slasher movies. Let's
right down to the woods setting.
But I don't. There's something so greasy about him swimming up under the water, and then because after that first thing with the dude, I thought for sure he was going to kill the girl.
Well, and I noticed that his arms were tattooed. Did you?
I did not.
As his arms came up out of the water, I noticed a few inks on his arm, and I was like, I wonder what kind of inks he's got.
Maybe he was a sailor. I mean, I don't think tattoos were as common back then. I don't know. But I just think that scene is bone chilling, and the fact that he not only doesn't kill her, but doesn't even reveal himself afterwards. So she's just left with knowing that she was fondled in the lake. But they're obviously like, no, it was me. I was playing around, you know, like no one is going to believe it. And she kind of almost, it's one of those things you could imagine shaking out of your mind as if maybe I was just imagining it or it was a fish or something, you know. You know, unfortunately, it was Fat Gargamel feeling you up from below.
Very, very friendly fish.
Yes.
It was a friendly dolphin.
Flipper.
When you really think about it beyond this point, the movie in a lot of ways ends up as a series of camping excursions. You know, they just camp at a couple of different
points. They never exactly get to his plot of land that supposedly
well, they're on it, I think, but like they acted like they were trying to climb a mountain, but they never seemed to move up towards the mountain. You know?
Well, I thought that they were eventually like gonna go to some like cabin that he had supposedly been willed or something like that, and I thought that was the whole intention of the groups being up there. So
yeah, it turns out. I mean, I think they kind of had the intention of doing it. I don't know if this was just the necessity of the movie. And they're like, we can't have these kids fucking climbing mountains. We just got to kill them right now in the trees. But, you know, it feels like they were just going out there for like a tertiary probe, you know, to check out the property and kind of just have like some good drunken dance sessions in the woods. And unfortunately, it got spoiled by Fat Gargamel and his twin brother. And so, what's that? Oh, I thought one of you guys was trying to say something.
There is one thing that I wanted to say about the original set. Apparently, the film's original script was based on a story by Jonas Middleton, or otherwise known as Joseph Middleton. And apparently, the film was originally titled "The Tennessee Mountain Murders" and later "The Last Ritual."
And it was like that shit existed like a couple of years prior, so before they even started filming. So in like 1978 or 77. So in a lot of ways, this predates Friday the 13th. Which you could also say about stuff like The Burning. I mean, it bugs me out when people try to say that that's just a Friday the 13th ripoff because it's markedly not true.
The other thing that I was getting out of this was kind of like a Legend of Boggy Creek kind of a vibe too. Which is it's not necessarily a hillbilly movie, but it's definitely got that sort of like backwoods country.
It's a Bigfoot movie that has a lot of hillbillies in it. For sure.
Yeah, there we go.
But you know,
or the Tom the Dreaded Sundown
absolute goddamn classic, dude. I love that movie, and for some reason, I was thinking about that a lot because this title reminds me of that one, and the fact that the Town That Dreaded Sundown, the title made sense, whereas just before, it never comes to play. You know, it's just a catchy title for the movie. Just before dawn, they're out there for like 4 fucking days or something.
Didn't like the final confrontation kind of take place just before dawn?
Yes, I mean it's like they worked it in, and I wouldn't even be surprised if that was tacked on at the end.
So,
kind of thing.
I mean, one of the things I thought was interesting when you're looking at the rope bridge, and again, when you're looking at the rope bridge, I mean, as an Eagle Scout, I've actually helped craft one of those types of bridges. Don't ask me how, because I doubt I'd remember. But I have done so, and I can tell you right now, as somebody who has not only crafted but walked across a bridge, not only is it scary trying to walk across something that you have to trust your own skill level in, keeping you alive, but those bridges are not easy to walk across if you have not had experience. Before.
Especially if you've done something like a rope course challenge. I know some of those have some of those roped things high above ground, and you're trying to like swing from one thing to another, and it's like looking down is not an option.
Right.
Yeah, they have stuff like that up here for sure. I've seen a rope bridge exactly like that. I don't know if they're really like, you know, state sanctioned now or whatever you want to call it. Like they'd prefer you not put that shit there. but they also can't entirely stop people from doing it. So
It's just like they used to have, and again, a lot of these types of old bridges they don't do a lot of these days. They used to have a ton of swinging bridges back in the day across rivers and stuff like that, and I'm sure they have them over in Oregon as well.
oh yeah,
And as somebody who grew up around a river, matter of fact, had land on a river, I can tell you swinging bridges are also no picnic walking across.
not at all. And it's just generally there's always seems to be that correlation between people deciding to try it when the river level is not good for messing around near it even.
You gotta add that extra suspense when you try.
I guess so. And then we find them a week later spit out by the salmon hatchery. It's fucked up. But pretty much, yeah, the rope bridge is a good point to go into this. They kind of cross through some more beautiful scenery, lots of that in this movie. Surprising lack of wildlife footage. They ushered away from the route of like using stock footage for creatures they didn't film and just injecting it in there. I'm glad, because it would have given it like a bad feel. As cool as that stuff is to see, when it's not happening on location, it makes it feel fucked up.
And yet, what the film would have been different if they'd taken that stock footage of Bigfoot and put that in there somewhere.
No, they could have put in some like footage of platypuses and stuff like that. That would have worked out well.
This big old funnel web dropping down. Why not? Let's just get emus running all over the place. Fuck it. But basically, they cross through some more beautiful footage and they end up camping again. And that's where the shit kind of starts. The next morning they wake up. It turns out that, our girl Megan's makeup is missing. And she assumes a raccoon has taken it, which they wear natural makeup. I don't understand why they'd have use of human makeup. But you never know. Shiny is pretty much how they work.
Hey, I've seen the great outdoors. I know those raccoons are.
You think they're applying corpse paint every night like a black metal band and then coming out to raid your trash?
Hey, they're after the hot dogs, but even they're a little bit too good for those because they know what they're made of. So,
dude, that Canadian fella feeds a lot of hot dogs to those raccoons. So it's like a zombie swarm of them. You should check
maybe they were cosplaying as like red pandas or something.
Possibly, I don't know. But basically her makeup goes missing, and that's where we get the scene Jake alluded to earlier, where they send old Joseph out into the woods. Jonathan, there we go. And he's looking for the makeup, and he runs across Mary Kate, or how the hell did you say her name again?
Mary Cat, isn't it?
Mary Cat, yeah. The little hillbilly girl, and she's clearly applied this makeup, and I love that scene where he laughs at her at first, but then he's nice about it, and he's like, "Well, I'm sorry," and then it immediately goes greasy though, because he walks over there to her and he's talking to her, and he's kind of like into the fact that she's into him, which is just like, what, dude? She probably tastes like spittoons and inbreeding. Like, what? And mixing in cheap fucking lipstick with that is not a good flavor. But she ends up planting a kiss on him, and then he, to his credit, stops her. I guess the original intent was for them to get it on, but thankfully they went away from that because that girl looks super young too. So, bad cringe avoided, thankfully. He ends up forcibly stopping her and she runs away. And so he follows after her bizarrely. Like at that point, I think I would have went back and I would have been just like, hillbilly girl took your makeup. We got to get the fuck out of here. Because we probably got an angry old dude with a double-barrel shotgun on the way. But he chases after her and decides to like playfully try to show her how to use this rope bridge. And that's when we get our first reveal properly, like, of our murderer. We saw him briefly in that initial sequence, but this is the first time we see him in all his warty fucking unibrow glory, standing there wearing like some dope high-vis hunting gear, which doesn't even make sense for sneaking up on people, but he seems to be successful at it. What do you guys think of the whole rope bridge scene? I guess let's run through that because it is a pivotal scene in the movie.
Bad waste of a good rope bridge.
Yep.
Indeed.
Well, you wanted to see that guy's coconut get cracked, Jake?
No. But yeah, it was a good scene. It was an interesting sequence there.
Well, I did like how they went about it. I mean, though, when the guy falls into the river, I
Mhm.
think to myself, this dude is doing perfectly fine just hanging onto the rope and just letting the stream just roll on. I really don't see the issue.
Fun fact, or rather, probably a not so fun fact, according to IMDb, I'd have to go to the actual location possibly and see for myself, but it certainly looked like it was right above a waterfall. And apparently, in real life, that waterfall is well known for suddenly sucking you over to your fucking death. You know?
Yeah.
So the guy was
Okay,
in
well,
legitimate danger in every sequence.
yeah, and I mean, I'll admit, like the guy could have held on for a little bit longer if he wanted to, though. I think. I mean, as far as to the rope, I'm not talking about like flowing down the river and dying, but like as far as like I think that you could tell that the stream wasn't as strong looking. I mean, he wasn't like you couldn't see his legs like floating up because the stream was so heavy. He was just kind of like there. I don't know.
I think.
I
mean, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, I just look at it as he had that rope, and as somebody who has utilized a rope to climb, this is one of the things that did make me a little bit mad about the movie. I have climbed a rope up the side of something like that. And I'm going to tell you right now, yes, it is hard as heck to climb hand over hand up the side of a cliff. But it's not so hard when you plant your feet on the cliff and walk up there.
I mean, even with the machete chop to his other wrist, that shit was unexcusable. Yeah. Like, you can't chop your feet off, bro.
Well, I'll make an observation here. As someone who has gone rafting on a mountain stream of similar flow to that water might have been cold. And if that water was cold, it would have been much harder for him to plant those feet and keep moving.
Cold, and you can't always see the current, like above waterfalls, like sometimes if they have a pool area above it, there'll be a really strong undercurrent that if you fuck with that's how you get like you're doing fine, and then suddenly you're boop over the edge and you're dead. Why people still swim there is beyond me, but.
Of course, then again, there's one thing that none of us have probably had to experience, which is the adrenaline coming from life or death. So
yeah,
I'll admit, it might be that with the adrenaline that's coming and you're worried about you're going to die, you might lose the ability to walk up because
some people do. Unfortunately, he didn't get that lift in a car off of baby strength. You know, he got the.
But I will say this. You know, he did seem to have some pretty good upper arm strength to pull himself up there, even being chopped with a machete on the arm. I would have thought if he has that kind of strength, he could definitely use his feet to balance as he's going up.
I still say, though, I'm almost sure he had that. Nice 70s style flannel on when he fell down.
Oh yeah,
and then when they found him later, he didn't. And it makes you wonder. At what point was that removed from him?
Well, remember,
raccoons, man. It was those darned raccoons there.
Well, no, it makes perfect sense because they found he just kind of washed over a cliff to them later, and they went back later and moved the body as like a fun gag on the people, you know. So I think that he had been fetched out of the water at some point, looted, and then used as like you know, a gag on those people, like one of the twins above there, and
by the raccoons.
Yeah,
those raccoons stole the makeup.
Yeah,
damn trash pandas. You know, pretty much at this point, the other people are back at the camp, none the wiser. You know, they think this dude just went out looking for this makeup, and they even at one point, Constance hears the whistle. But he's been goofing around with it so much. It's your classic boy who cried wolf or joked around too often type thing. So they don't think much of it, and they only hear it the once, so they're not even sure that it's a thing that they need to worry about, you know. they assume he's just going to come back. But when he doesn't show up after a while, they start worrying. So his brother, the dude with the camera, who I swear I've seen in other movies before too. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time to look it up because I was watching Candyman and eating and stuff. And then just kind of forgot about it. But I swear I've seen that guy in other
Ralph
stuff.
Seymour. He's been in on some stuff. He was in Rain Man apparently, and Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Empire of the Sun. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I've surely seen him in something. But him and, he heads out first to look for his brother, who is Jonathan or whatever. And then, Jonathan's girlfriend, Megan, our topless wonder, she heads out shortly afterwards. And they end up sort of meeting up at this church, right? I love the way they shoot that, too, how there's that dude's body laying there the whole time.
Yeah.
And neither of them notice it. But they do it in such a natural way where it's like you can buy that they didn't notice it. But they end up at this church. And, he's left his glasses inside, which looked like sunglasses to me. Must have been some prescription shit, though, because the dude was, I don't know. Did they have those?
He couldn't see so well without them.
He couldn't, but did they have those, self-tinting sunglasses, or did he have, that dope thing that flips sunglasses down over your glasses? I don't know. I didn't catch it.
I love that church scene because, again, it's really cool because you're discovering kind of a lost ruin and maybe even civilization. And I've seen stuff like that going through the woods where you can tell some remains of where people actually had gathered just kind of off the grid. And it's just really kind of cool seeing that because you can see it, because it wasn't necessarily even, though it could have been that family there that was going to that church, but it looks like there might have been even a wider community sitting there prior to that.
Oh, for sure, man.
Yeah.
It's just really cool.
I love it. I mean, and, it is something that you can find around here, from old school, especially out here where I live. I can't speak to over there because they've had the Forest Service through there so many times, checking things out. I imagine they removed a lot of stuff like that. Probably the main reason they had to build the church for this production. They did a good job on it too, by the way. It looked like an old disused church that just fell into disrepair,
But I can say just from living up in the Appalachians and those areas, which are very old mountains in of their own right, and there are some amazing things that you can find. I've seen the remains of old cabins going through the woods as a kid. One of the things that I find was amazing. The most amazing find I saw when I was going through the woods was actually the remains of an old cannon, Civil War era cannon, which is just really cool. And you think to yourself, why the heck would they be fighting out here?
Well, dude, I mean, not, if we take and get on the back roads here and drive 30 minutes out and towards the east, there's this old schoolhouse. It's called Holdman. Really, it's Holdman Road is the road, but people just refer to it as that schoolhouse. But it's one of those old school, just sort of turn of the century schoolhouses, and it's been abandoned for years, but there's still desks and old books and things decaying there, There used to be the whole thing that it was haunted. So
I know that there's
and shit like that.
I know that there's a place here in Wisconsin called Old World, Wisconsin, where if you visit it during the summer, there's an old time schoolhouse that you can go to, and they actually have an actor playing a teacher there oftentimes, and they will teach and treat you exactly how they used to treat people.
I mean, that's a sinister thing about those old schoolhouses, man. I mean, it's no wonder one that doesn't have some touristy thing like that going on, like Holdman, gets rumors about it being haunted. It's not haunted. It just smells of pack rat piss, but it's an interesting thing to go look at, But that aside, the church scene is just glorious. I mean, they're in there. They totally missed the body the first
And the music being played at this moment is actually kind of interesting, too. I thought it was kind of cool that was playing in the background, kind of an organ-y like music.
Oh yeah,
Sort
dude,
of-
I really enjoyed the music throughout. We'll touch more on that with Scorp for sure, but yeah, you're right. Like everything about this scene, I really enjoy. The way, like I said, they miss the body and then they go out. And he's like wanting to show her the cemetery again because there's this old cemetery out there. Which I guess if you look close enough, it has the Logan names on it, which is that family that, you know, they keep, the hillbilly family that's out there. Katie Cat or whatever her name is, you know, those people. But they go out there and he's left his glasses inside, but they think that his brother's coming and they want to pull a prank on him since he's been pulling pranks on everyone else the whole time. So they decide they're going to like try to make him jealous or whatever. And the little dude plants a kiss on his brother's girlfriend, and she's like, "Man, you should really give him pointers." Like, I think she kind of meant it. But he can't see shit. He can't see shit because he's without his glasses. So he thinks this figure walking up behind him is his brother, and he's like, "Man, he looks pissed." And then he just gets stuck with the machete. What do you guys think about that build up to that kill? I think that was.
I like how they did that. The out of focus blob, you know, in the distance, and you can definitely see that they were selling it pretty good. That he really thought that, you know, his brother was coming towards them, and you know,
why wouldn't you?
But.
I don't know. You guys enjoy it? I mean, I thought it was a cool setup to a kill. You know, we've seen people without their glasses before in horror movies, and it's like, oh, I can't quite see it. But it's very rare that they use it for more than just a way to set them up for a basic kill. You know, it actually made sense.
And I like that the weapons that are used here are like rusted and like old and looking, you know, kind of a rustic feel.
Oh, there's some big mean ass old rusty machetes, man. And definitely that had to have had an influence later on Friday the 13th. I can't sit here and fathom how there's not a connection.
Oh yeah.
But basically, you know, he ends up sticking the dude with the machete. Guy goes down. I love really how they only show it for a second. And then he comes back later and the dude's like heaving, like trying to breathe with a friggin' machete through its body. But they just hold on like the handle of the machete, raising up and down and like wiggling around. And then they show the other, you know, the hillbilly dude pull it out of him. And he's like, all, you know, it's just good stuff. And then pretty much, you know, the girl has retreated back inside the church. That's when she notices the body. And that's when we get the reveal that it is twins. Actually, it's not just one of these big fat Gargamel looking dudes, it's two of them. What are your guys' thoughts on that reveal? I guess we'll just go around real quick. We'll start with you, Forrest.
My thought on that reveal with the twins. I'm not sure what to really make of it. I mean, they were pretty fucking gruesome to begin with. Actually, I would say gruesome and just disturb. My mind's not.
No worries, bud. I mean, gather your thoughts. We'll move on to you, I guess you, Jake. What do you think about the twins there?
Well, they're ugly.
Yep.
Well, I mean, did you expect it to be twins, or I thought they played it off pretty well, like it was just one dude for the vast majority of it.
I'll be honest, I can't recall if I don't think I thought it was twins, but I wasn't at all surprised. They had already planted that seed right at the beginning that there seems to be a lot of twins in this area. You know, and it didn't really surprise me at all. I did think it was the reveal was well done, and I was like, oh, but I don't think I was surprised by it.
Right. I mean, I guess apparently earlier drafts of it had them revealing the twins at the rope bridge scene.
Right.
Like he would have went across. encountered the one dude, been whacked by the machete or something, and like, you know, struggled across to the other side only to meet the other twin, which would have been rad if his death was placed later in the movie. If they had
I think it would have been
ahead.
cool if you had seen him use his feet to walk up the side of that. You think he's safe. As soon as he comes close to the top, that other twin uses the machete to cut the rest of the rope bridge and sent him tumbling back down to the bottom. And even not necessarily even revealing the twin, but just making you wonder, like, how the freak did he manage to get that far over that quickly?
Right. They could have done it. I mean, they even could have left their outfits the same because, you know, as you noticed, each of them was taking like items, but the other dude didn't have any new items yet because they hadn't killed Jonathan. But they could have just like left the wardrobe different as like a subtle clue that it wasn't the same one. So maybe your brain would have been like, well, maybe he took off the vest, you know.
Well, I have one more thing to say about the twins. Come play with us, Danny.
Fuck yeah. I don't know. That whole church scene is great, though. It's a bummer we don't get to see what happens to the girl. That's one area where I can firmly agree with like Forrest in terms of it kind of half-assing some of the gore. I don't think they half-assed the other kill scenes. I think they were done good. I think though that just skimping out on showing us Megan's death was kind of a dick punch, you know, and I don't think we ever got anything from that. We didn't even get them discovering her body, did we? Nope. So pretty much after this point, we're just down to, what is it, Warren and Constance. And this is where I think the movie takes on like a different vibe than your typical slasher. It becomes very much more of our friends are lost in the woods. What do we do? Kind of real life situation almost.
How do we pick up the pieces after everything we've been through? Kind of a moment, you know.
Exactly. And also trying not to panic too much. That's kind of Warren's role in the whole thing, which a lot of people make that mistake when people are lost in the woods here, where they're like, let's search for them for 90 minutes before we even contact somebody that can help us launch a wide search. So in 90 minutes, a person can wander really far in the woods. It's weird. It doesn't seem to make sense sometimes, but it happens. But, you know, this is where like the real panic inducing part of the movie comes in, because then Warren realizes that the keys this is after the fact, but they're just kind of playing around none the wiser when friggin' Jonathan's body tumbles over the falls. And the one girl's pretty sure that he's been murdered, because what are the chances these locals have been warning us about that, and then our friend just turns up dead. You know, so they kind of freak out and go back to camp, and they realize no one else is there, and that's when what I just described sets in, that panic of like, we're in an emergency situation now in the middle of the woods. And that's when Warren realizes the keys are on Jonathan, because he had given him the keys. So that he has to go back to the body while he leaves Constance just sitting at the camp now, like totally just kind of catatonic almost from the shock of the whole experience. And he tells her to listen for the whistle. So he goes back to the body to get the keys. He does find the keys on the body, which has been moved and propped up with those sweet sunglasses on it. So he now knows that there's someone for sure. There's no doubt in his mind. He's on the same page as Constance. Like, someone out here moved the body to fuck with us. Thankfully, he gets the keys, but he can't find the whistle. And I think that's when we flip back to Constance, and she hears the whistle, and it like snaps her out of this catatonic state, which I think it was Jake touched on. It was like frustrating that she kind of went numb during all these scenes in the movie. I think all of us at some point. And it was, man. I mean, it's like right now is definitely not the time to be doing that. But she did it, and this whistle snaps her out of it. But it turns out it's one of our hillbilly Gargamels out there with his unibrow, or his big giant bushy eyebrows. I think one of them had a unibrow and the other one had two big old thick boys. But he chases her up a tree, right? What do you guys think about that whole sequence with him chopping down that goddamn tree? Like, they really felled that tree with that chicken in the branches,
right?
Right. You could see they dug a little pit for her to land in, but god damn, that
well, you could hear him chopping the darn thing, and see the thing shaking as she was screaming, Warren.
I mean, I'm not complaining about the booty shorts she was wearing when she climbed in. Those were a highlight of the movie for me, for sure. Damn. But girl actually held her own once she kind of snapped out of it. We'll get to that. That's our finale piece here.
She did kind of look sexy a bit at the
That's
music
what I'm saying, bro.
scene, you know? Once she got her hair down.
She was letting it down a little bit, and then when she put that hair down, strapped on them shorts, man, it was like, whoa, she had a slab on her. I was not complaining and they played it up nicely during that tree scene. Let me tell you, if ever there was an excuse to shoot it from below, but they really fell that tree with her in there, and that just blew my mind. Even if that was a dude in like a lady's outfit, he ate shit into that pit that they dug, and then got out and ran away. It looked like it was a girl though. Forrest, you seemed to pick up on that moment. Did that look like it was the chick, or did it look like it was a stunt man?
Probably a stunt. It was probably a stunt man
or a stunt lady
or a stunt person.
If it was a stunt man, he had an ass on him. So congratulations to him too. But yeah, that scene really was just a peak of the movie for me. It's not too often in slasher movies where they actually fall the tree with someone in it, you know.
Right.
But pretty much she bolts out of there, and right as this is happening, see, we kind of skimmed over the fact that our boy, the park ranger, was out here looking for these people the whole time. And I absolutely love those sequences in the movie where you got, was it George Kennedy going through the woods on Abigail, like talking to her the whole time, talking about how he has half a mind to leave these people to their fate.
Right.
There's a beautiful shot of him running through the stream on this horse. In pure darkness almost. You can just see like the silhouette of him on the horse, and I imagine that took a lot of people back to his Western days, because it felt like a shot you might see in a Western, you know. But he shows up just in time to like sort of question this family, and they basically tell him like, we don't know shit, bro, like get out of here. And after he leaves, there's that bone chilling scene where you can hear him beating Mary Cat. And she's like telling him, no more murders, or whatever. And she escapes. See, now that I'm describing this in real time to you guys, I kind of feel like he had to have seen The Hills Have Eyes also. Because that exactly parallels Ruby in The Hills Have Eyes. It was either super parallel thinking, or he just very tastefully ripped it off. Either way, you know, cheers to you, man. She comes out and she finds, you know, old George Kennedy on Abigail there. And she hitches a ride with them. She tells them, like, I can take you to their camp. So they show up just in time as, like, they find friggin' Warren right before this whole shit with the tree falling and the dude attacking her, like, in the midst of the fallen tree, which I thought was
Warren
really
has his little dramatic moment, too.
Oh, yeah. He's totally cracked by the time that old George Kennedy finds him. So he's just out of his mind too for a minute there, and it takes him a moment to come out of it once he realizes that they actually saved Constance. But George Kennedy puts 3 rounds in that fat boy real goddamn quick, doesn't he? That Western experience came into play right there, and he looked good holding that gun, man. But you know, presumably they've kind of saved the day here, or so they think, because we got to remember they haven't even had it revealed that there's 2 of them yet. So bizarrely, after this whole sequence, well, I mean, okay, what did you guys think of that? Do you think that the dude was going to get to the chick and it was just going to be Warren? I mean, this is a little early in slasherdom for us to assume that the survivor girl rule is in place.
Yeah, it is very early on.
Yeah, I thought her duration in the movie was pretty tenuous or whatever as soon as that tree got knocked over with that poor bastard in it.
Yeah, you never knew what was going to happen until it happened, and that I have to say, for this series or for this particular movie, I really did like that you really didn't know what was going to happen until it did, because even though a lot of stuff really did come to it, so to speak, it did take a while before it got there.
Right.
And you didn't know whether it was going to follow those tropes because again, the tropes hadn't been invented yet, which was great.
Yes. That's the fun of like proto slashers or early slashers is that it wasn't established yet, so you didn't really know if there was just going to be some batshit crazy twist ending or some weird gimmick that comes into play, or just it was good times. I mean, this plays it pretty safe compared to a lot of stuff, but yeah, there was that sense of you didn't quite know how it was going to play out, and it almost ran like a thriller for a certain amount of it there. But you know, they've rescued this guy, and then at this point, bizarrely, old George Kennedy's like, I'm going to leave you guys here to collect your camp or some shit. Like, no, you immediately take them to fucking people that can tend to them after some shit like that. But, you know, they get left to pack up their camp. Old Warren is out there doing his best to, like, recover his manhood after being a sniveling bitch right there for a minute. And then, you know, we get the reveal to these people of our second camper after Constance comes out of the tent. She's like fully snapped, I think, at this point, and she put on some like Megan's makeup, and she, you know, kind of, you know, quotes that line that she had earlier in the movie about how you never know who you're going to run into out here. And she's sexied herself up a little bit. Other ways too. I think she reties her shirt or something like that. And then the second hillbilly shows up. And Warren kind of gets smoked right away. Like, he just takes the machete to the fucking ribs, and he's down for the count. And
well,
again,
a little bit before that, I like the little lead up to the hillbilly coming because all of a sudden, one of the tents like suddenly like comes apart, and
I was gonna mention
then the
that.
next tent.
Dude, that's got
I love that part.
Sinister fucking implications on that. Go ahead,
and Warren ends up.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, in case I forget, this will be my. I mean, when I think about my favorite part in the film, this is probably one of my favorite parts because you're hearing the sounds around it, and you're seeing that, and that's how it is when it comes to the woods like that, and you're not used to it, and you're hearing all the sounds around you, stuff that eventually they can look at and they say, and they can use in the Blair Witch or other types of media later on, where you're out in the middle of the woods alone. It's just to me, it's just great seeing that.
Well, and dude, the collapsed tent, like I said, there's some sinister implications.
And he makes that offhanded comment to her, like, it was you.
You don't know how to set up a tent? Yeah. He says, was it you that set that up? He's like, you don't know how to set up a tent? And this is the thing, dude, and this is fucking documented. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Missing 411. But it's bone-chilling shit when you really get into looking at the details of a lot of the national park disappearances. And a common factor in them is it will be like some experienced hunter, 20, 30 years in the field, knows how to go camping and like all that shit. And they'll find their camp with nothing touched. No animals have even raided their food. And the tent will be collapsed like that, like with this, exactly how it happens in this movie, with the center of it like collapsing in, like somehow something forced it to break or
something very creepy. Because it's when you think about it, yes, somebody who does not know anything, yes, those people cannot set up a tent.
Right.
But otherwise, though, I mean, when I say it's not hard to set up a tent, when you say anything, I mean, like, if you go to point 1, you can set up a tent.
Yeah.
It really is one of the most basic skills out there. I know Jake would agree with me. I'm sure you've set up plenty of tents.
A couple.
But yeah, I mean, it's really easy to set up a tent. I mean, if
especially
I can
those
do
basic
it,
tents that like minimalist campers use, where it's just 2 rods stretched under some, you know, tent material. You don't fuck that up. Like, you just put them in the holes and you just erect your little tiny pup tent. And more often than not, they find those like collapsed somehow with everything inside intact, like nobody touched it. And that's exactly what happens in this. Like they just pull whatever out from under the tent and it collapses. They were just in there and nothing was wrong, you know. And the most bizarre thing with the missing 411 stuff is animals won't even fuck with the shit around that spot, you know. I'm not going to go all tinfoil hat and offer a theory, but it is creepy, to say the least. And I thought it was a cool element in this, accidental or otherwise. It's like a cool element to it, you know, because it strikes a tone of reality, especially if you live in the North.
It's those damn raccoons again.
Just stealing
in the great outdoors.
Those raccoons, like stealing things, collapsing tents, killing people. That's what they do.
They're like ants, man. I mean, they can only lift so much on their own, but together they are strong. Okay, and they can just swarm on you, carry you back to their panda cave, and you're gone forever. But
that's
at this
something.
point, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say it's something we're missing in the horror genre: killer raccoons.
Really, it's true.
Actually, there are two films that I enjoy from the independent genre called Crackoon and Crackoon. So I love them. So
that's I'm gonna have to look into those. But you know, basically at this point, Second Hillbilly arrives. We've got our girl Constance in her power makeup. Her shirt's tied nice and tight. You know, Warren's down for the count on a count of that machete chop, and Constance just flies into action finally for the first moment in the movie, and boy, fucking howdy, does she make the most of it. And she just clambers onto that big old bastard and starts beating him and punching him. And she was throwing it. She got him with like a legit left hook at one point. The whole fight leading up to this was like, God damn, girl, where was this the whole time? We'd probably everybody be alive, you know. She was working that fool, and then eventually, you know, he gets her in like this bear hug, and you think that she's down for the count, and you're waiting for Warren to get up there and do something, but he's just sniveling like a little bitch. And I guess the whole reason, the whole inspiration for this scene was to do something that hadn't been done in a movie yet, and I would wager that they friggin' succeeded, because I've seen it in movies since, but never prior. She somehow wriggles around and she fists the dude's throat to kill him, is essentially what happens. She jams her fist down his fat throat and holds it there and keeps pushing it further until he's dead. And then when she pulls her hands out, you can see they actually doctored a couple of wounds on top of her forearm and hand, you know, because you would have pushed past teeth and all types of unfortunate things, you know. Go ahead.
So she wasn't the first survival girl. She was probably one of the first survivor girls. Again, it's all a matter of what this person has seen, because in reality, a lot of these concepts could be occurring concurrently, I should say, as we go. And I do think that is a cool thing, even though I was kind of pissed off at the boyfriend or whoever, who was basically just, I'm going to sit here and do nothing.
Yeah,
because I'm scared.
I mean, his wound wasn't even fatal. It was one of those things, a few stitches and a day or two in the hospital. Make sure you don't have internal type things. He bitched down hard, but he kind of did that earlier in the movie too. In a way, I think her like weird catatonic serenity is what helped her go into full-on fight or flight mode, and she did both of those. Like, she did the flight mode when she went up the damn tree in those booty shorts, and she did the fight mode when she just choked this dude to death from the inside out.
I was expecting like her to like reach inside and like pull out his heart or some shit.
Later on in the 80s, that's totally what they would have done, but at this point that's still pretty goddamn savage. It looked brutal, and I think it was a cool closer to this. And then basically that's the end of the movie. I mean, she comforts old sniveling Warren there, and we get a good shot of
just
like
fist the son
Oregon
of a
sunset.
bitch in his pie hole.
That's all they had to do, apparently. And looking at those boys, they probably could have tempted them in with a nice piece of chocolate or a couple of cakes. They could have lured them into a trap fairly easily to open their mouths. So they could, hungry.
Baby Ruth?
Baby Ruth.
What do you guys think of the movie, I guess, overall? And then we'll get into our intros here. But do you got like favorite character? Let's do favorite character, favorite scene, and what do you think of the overall music? I guess special effects were kind of a non-issue.
I like the redhead. She was cool. She showed us a bit of herself that she truly bared her soul to us who watched.
Among other things.
And
fun fact, I guess locals swarmed that spot when they did that pretty much because word got out to those rangers, man.
Well,
if I
would have been there. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say if I was one of those locals, I would have wanted to watch that cop the field moment. I mean, that would have been definitely a Ginger from Gilligan's Isle moment.
What were you going to say there, though, Brandon? I was interested in that.
You were looking at overall opinions, and I was very happy to have been recommended this film. I am glad to have it in my collection. I really do like the early slashers as they are, and a lot of times when you look at the art as it is, you think and you reach back and you say to yourself, what is it that inspired this art? But sometimes a lot of times many of the same ideas operate currently. The light bulb, the telephone, ideas like this, they have been created not but years apart by different creators that were not even familiar with the work of the previous person. So to see the slasher movie created and recreated in these formats back in the 80s, it's an idea that you knew its time had come. And I like having this piece of slasher history restored and done in a beautiful fashion that you can see the wonders around it. So again, I'm glad to have the film as it is. It is great. It is a good piece of history. And yes, it may have been or may not have been inspired, but a lot of times, sometimes these types of advancements occur within the same type of time period.
For sure. I mean, there's parallel thinking, and then there's Carlos Mencia stealing motherfuckers' jokes. You know what I mean? Like, there's a difference between having an idea that's similar but dissimilar in enough ways that you can claim that there was your own original thought went into. And I think this possesses some of that. I think that it definitely has, elements where it pioneered some shit that I think if you want to look at it in any way in terms of what it ripped off or what it inspired, it's kind of equal, Yeah, they might have took a thing or two here, but they did it tastefully. And then it did some cool shit that had to have inspired other stuff. I mean, heavy use of the machete in here, and within a couple of years or something like that, Jason, that would become like the weapon that was associated with him for life. I don't think that that's a coincidence. And this definitely predated the iconic machete Jason combo. Wrong Turn for sure owes this movie a debt of gratitude. The guy had to have seen it. I'm fully in Brandon's camp with that there's just, I don't think there's any way that this wasn't a factor.
Well, they gotta have seen it at one point or another.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put my shit in there right away, but I'll cap that off at the end. What about you, Forrest? What are your overall thoughts on it?
Overall thoughts. I think I might have to. I'm gonna try and give this one another watch. Just to as more to reappraise it. Because so far it didn't really make. Because I feel like I tried watching this 3 times already. It didn't really have much. I feel like it didn't really leave much of an impression on me.
Think of it in the time period it was made as much as the current time period.
Right. Although I have to agree with Brandon about the redhead.
I think the caught me, feel me a moment in the little pond and the fisticuffs choke hold move for a female having a female vengeance
got you going, did it?
Oh yeah, it definitely got me going.
Hey, different strokes, baby.
In backwoods Oregon, girl fist you.
Yeah, I've yet to experience that, but maybe I haven't been out there enough. So you were saying, Forrest, overall, I mean, you're going to reappraise it. It didn't leave as much of an impression on you. Have we given you anything to think about in terms of that reappraisal of the scenes, I should say?
Anything to think about? I guess so. What Brandon was saying about put it in the time period that the slasher genre was in its infancy and it hadn't quite been perfected. It hadn't really been down to us. They hadn't really gotten the formula down to a science yet. Just try to keep that.
For sure.
I think this was footage that was raw at the moment, and it may not have gotten like a lot of critical praise, maybe because of the genre that it was in, because horror was looked at as a taboo thing in the early 70s. I mean, you had to sneak to go see the drive-in films from your parents, I mean, we'd just gotten over that whole 50s, 60s comic book horror cancelment moment. So, I mean, to me, a lot of things hadn't been done before, and I've never seen a woman stick her hand down a dude's throat and choke the bitch to death, So
it mostly seems to be a creature feature thing. This is the only movie I can think of where it's done to goddamn human, like without some weird over the top payoff, like a heart getting pulled out.
And again, I've always had one thing against looking at the slasher genre as being born in the 80s, because in reality, we've got the Herschel Gordon-Levitt's, we've got all the people of the 70s,
Herschel
and I do feel like, or whatever, the
Splatter Robin.
You know what I mean? Exactly. Lewis.
Yeah.
Lewis. Sorry. Herschel Gordon-Lewis. We've got the basic 70s gore fest, and yes, a lot of those were lost to us in time, but in the 70s, that is when really the splatter films were that was the renaissance of this type of film. The problem is the majority of the renaissance was lost because of how cheap the film stock was.
Yeah.
And it is a shame. I really feel like you had a kind of a hidden age that disappeared. And I would be willing to bet, I'd be willing to bet money that there were many films similar to these and the Halloweens and the other films in the 70s that never got to see light of day, that just can't exist because of the film stock itself.
Well, right, dude. I mean, and then it's like in the 80s, they obviously got better about that. And, then later stuff was shot on video, which is easier to preserve and yada, yada. I mean, it progressed, thankfully, in a better direction when it comes to that stuff. There's far less lost films or drive-in, regional shit, which factors heavily into our theme that would have been lost to time later as the decades went on. And then in the 90s, we were blessed in a lot of ways with the direct to video market stuff like Full Moon, where we don't have to worry about those movies ever being lost because there's about a goddamn million fucking copies of it on VHS out there. But
we're almost spoiled in the age we're in right now.
If there was one that I remember when we still had Movie Stop, may the rest in peace. When we still had Movie Stop, I inquired about trying to turn in things for credit or cash or whatever, and they told me point blank, like I believe they said they might be willing to go a penny for a copy of The Grudge because there were so many copies in existence that they had no need for any more.
Well, right. And then, I mean, it's even if you look at it on a lower scale, a lot of independent films that are like what this maybe would have been back then.
Right.
Because ironically, even though it was, I don't know, back in the day, it seemed to be easier to get like $100,000 to make a movie from a bunch of dentists or some shit than it is now to like get that on a GoFundMe, because they would, there's a whole different jive to that. Fred Olen Wright talks a lot about it. And many of these lost films, if they were available to him back in the day, he'd have shot 5 minutes of bumper footage with John Carradine and re-released it as like his own movie and made a bunch of fucking money on it. And it's absolutely hilarious. But I don't know, man. I think that like this movie status as like a lost film for a while makes it intriguing as well. I think on the cover of Dave's edition of it, actually, it might talk about how it was like a rediscovered classic of the dude who did Squirm. And it's just kind of cool to think about it in that sense. The way they capture Oregon is really fucking rad. Because they do it in that close-up, like kind of close quarters slasher style, but there's still a few scenes where they show the grandness of that wilderness, and it's a scary thing, man. The soundtrack to me and the whole, vibe that the movie sets up is its best quality.
So real quick, sorry to interrupt, but I feel like it's been a good long while since I heard the last person clearly start to give their favorite impressions, and I'm wondering if anyone else was still waiting to go besides me.
Did we forget you, Jake? I thought we got through all. I'm sorry.
No. I agreed very much with the Jamie Rose's performance being a classic moment, but other than that, the part where Constance goes all feral at the end and actually starts kicking ass and taking names, I found that very fun. And George Kennedy had a couple fun moments too. And yeah, I'll go with that. But
I'm sorry. I truly am sorry, man. I thought that we'd hit you.
As far as special effects, I just thought I'd want to add that too. Yes, there's not a lot in special effects. But one also needs to keep in mind that the area that they shoot in is also a part of that.
Right.
The environment, and in this case, it really is the environment that shines and makes this film what it is. You're looking at the environment, you're thinking to yourself, oh crap, and that's something.
One interesting thing that this one and Candyman actually have in common is that they both actually put some of their stars in legit danger in order to get location shots in areas that you just don't film a lot of movies.
Yeah, they're truly regional in the purest sense. Right. I'm glad that Brandon pointed that out, because I think of a lot of movies that I've seen that have been shot around up here. This one does a really good job of just putting you in the position of what it would be like to be out camping in this area or something. Yeah.
Hopefully without the tents collapsing and the machete.
Yeah, and religiously fueled inbred hillbillies. That's always not what you want. I don't know, man. I mean, it's just obviously it was a great discovery. I'm glad that it turned out that I had not seen this before, because I was going into it kind of thinking maybe I had, and it's just a cool discovery. I think it's like one of those things that falls into that awesome category of like awesome early sort of proto slasher movies that were still just figuring it out. Again, I would double down on I don't think there's any way that this didn't influence the machete work that we came to associate a certain goalie. But it's just, it's just quality organ stuff at the end of the day. And Brandon's like summary of that probably sums up why I'm as stoked on this, especially because it is like a cool regional thing. And I think that was the spirit of this, and I'm glad that Candyman is that way too. Because it's you want to have those movies that are like shot where you live, so you can think about, oh shit, that was just right here. I'm totally gonna follow through with that whole visit to the shit later on, and because I'm going to Jessica's again on payday, which is in like 2 weeks, and I have to drive past the place that I go to or the place they shot this to go to. But as per usual, we're going to read off the lists from the regional horror films, 1958 to 1990, a state-by-state guide with interviews by Brian Albright. And he skimped out fairly considerably on our list for Oregon, because this movie's not even in there, for one thing. And it's so short that it's just going to go like this. Defula from 1975, which is apparently a Dracula movie they made for kids.
Happen to have it.
Are you serious?
A bootleg copy.
It's one of those things that sounds totally hilarious and wholesome, so look at it at some point. We got Sasquatch, The Legend of Bigfoot from 1977. It's directed by Ed Ragosino, Italian fellow, apparently. We got Unhinged, which is one that I've always thrown out there as like a recommendation. It's all shot at this creepy old mansion. It's about like these girls that end up in there with this insane lady.
Not to be confused with our current Unhinged movie, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's a that was directed by Don Gronquist, and then that's it. That's the only entries they have. Wow. I'm going to give an honorable shout out, to Just Before Fucking Dawn, because we just talked about it, and I don't understand how that didn't end up in here. I guess it really was lost for a period,
Yeah. What's the publication on that book?
What, like the company?
The publication date. I'm guessing might be shortly in the 90s with that time frame, but
let's see here. It looks like 2012 is this printing of it. But it had to have been out before that. I don't know. I mean, maybe, there has to be a reason that Just Before Dawn isn't in there, because it should be, But honorable mentions to that, also Behind the Mask, Rise of Leslie Vernon, and Dr. Giggles. So,
Leslie Vernon was an Oregon one?
Twas indeed.
Nice.
Well worth it.
So I guess we can fly. Everybody's done their final thoughts here. Solid movie. Check it out. It was on Tubi for a bit. Isn't anymore. So tough shit.
Well, and actually, before we do our outros, since you mentioned Bigfoot, I figured I'd do something fun here and do a little montage.
Okay.
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 So, why don't we start with our outros? Why don't you tell us, Mo?
Did we do our favorite scenes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, didn't we?
Didn't we?
Oh, throw out your favorite scene there, Brandon. I don't think we just did kind of general favorites. We didn't really do a favorite scene.
I thought
I'm sure we could run through it real quick.
My favorite scene is just I like the rope bridge scene. It just is I've had problems with it. I'm not going to lie. But it is a scene though still that I enjoy, and I do like in general. So
both times they walk across it, like when they're together and when that dude's by himself, I get anxiety just with them walking on it.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Forrest? What's your favorite scene if you had to pick one?
I'd probably say the bridge scene.
No, it is a good one. What about you, Jake?
Well, that's it. It was the end with the where she goes all feral.
Yeah. What about you there, Dave?
I'd said that mine was the cop the field moment, and as well as the whole choke the living shit out of the dude with my fist moment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think if I had to pick a singular favorite scene, I don't know, man. It's probably where he stabs that guy in the dick.
How lovely.
Yeah. So there it is. Outros.
All right, Mo, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I pretty much just do Drunken Master Studios these days. Going to be getting back in the mix with the Rebel Gaming Club, but until then, I do have some Herschel Gordon reviews I did recently. Got a Human Centipede discussion with Dave that's going to be dropping on our Cinema Slut podcast channel, and that's about it. I got some Full Moon stuff I'm going to be doing in the future, but that's under wraps for now. Definitely sub up Dustin. He wasn't able to be here, as well as Dan. Crypto Horrors and Indie Horror Film Creative, respectively. So there we go.
All righty. Going over to you, Forrest. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right. I'm Forrest Bennett. I'm based in Long Island, New York. Currently, I'm with a group called Script Club. Where we're doing a weekly dramatic reading of the dramatic table reading of the Super Mario Brothers movie. Tomorrow I'll be acting in a short film. I can't really give too many details about it, other than that I'll be playing a mysterious government agent.
Dude,
Good luck.
That blog of yours I've been meaning to check out.
Yeah, I haven't updated it. I have not updated it since last time I put a new blog post was early on in the pandemic.
All right.
Although I did update my YouTube channel earlier today.
You did. You got a pickup video out there, eh?
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
Cool. Alrighty.
Cool. We'll let the Kotobuki Brandon do his thing down here. These dudes.
Yep.
I'll let Jake go first, and I'll head after.
Yeah, I'm Kotobuki Jake. I'm co-host of Septum Sin versus the World, and we had a fun discussion this week where the two of us went on with Dave and Dane about our favorite films of the year, and it was pretty good. Had one last week on the worst films of the year, although Brandon was the only one who had a significant list of bad films. And we got stuff like that going on. I am a movie, anime, TV, generally media collector going on. I was excited this week on the pickups to throw out some CDs that I was really excited to get. So, all kinds of media. And just, hang out on his channel, shoot shit with you guys.
Being adorable.
What's that?
Just being adorable.
Oh yeah, indeed.
We need a Kotobuki Jake plushie. Okay, we need plushies for both y'all. Get them out there.
We do have a T-shirt that was
Yeah,
produced,
I meant to put that on earlier and I forgot. Oh well. But
and Jake has a birthday gift that I have to that he needs to pick up eventually.
Yes, indeed.
I'm waiting for him over here.
Yeah. So anyway, that's all I got tonight.
Alrighty. What about you, Brandon? Why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
I'm Septum Sin, a Septum Sin versus the World. We like physical media here. We look at mainly new releases and pickups these days, pandemic and all that fun stuff that's been going on in 2020 still kind of carries on into the 2021 sphere. But we do occasional, we do weekly Monday discussions. And again, we had worst of and best of 2020, and our best of was really good. We threw out some amazing titles, so you should check it out if you're looking for suggestions on what to watch, and not just the typical Oscar bait films that we'll have as a later discussion in March. mainly because they are kind of throwing them to the side. We've also got a couple reviews. I'm working on the review for Return to Splatter Farm, and I do plan on going back to that and revisiting that after I'm done with some 2020 viewing and eventually getting that out there, as well as a lot of other fun projects on the channel. We do have an upcoming anime discussion on, I think it's Kuruzuka or something like that.
That would be Kurozuka, yes.
So that's going to be at the last Monday of the month. So mark that on your calendars. I've never seen it, and I hadn't really heard of it before Dave mentioned it. And Dave is going to be the one that is going to be running that discussion. So we'll be looking forward to that as then on the channel. But of course,
Alrighty.
I do help with Inside Movies Galore, and we do have the continuation of our horror movies as we go to speak, so to speak of it. And we're going to be heading to Forest's neck of the woods next week for our pre-show, which would be Sleepaway Camp in New York. And then we're going to move to Dave's neck of the woods in Wisconsin as we talk about Gags the Clown. So I look forward to those. And of course, if no one does the backup, I'll be glad to back up Gags the Clown, even though I haven't really seen it. And I will pass that back on.
Alrighty. My name is David Streggy. I am one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us on this journey of films, small or large. It's been relatively entertaining, and hopefully we have some very cool stuff coming up on the agenda as we continue our local horror themed month. But I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I go on about things that I have picked up, reviews of my own, and opinions that I love to share with each and every one of y'all. I think I have a piece of knowledge to share, and hopefully you just enjoy hearing some of that inside knowledge. So thank you for listening. Have a great day, evening, and morning. And as it is just before dawn with us, we are concluding this discussion. So join us next week as we continue. And have a blessed evening, morning, or day, wherever you are.
Buenas